Hey everyone, and welcome to Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we work with small business owners and entrepreneurs to help them win corporate clients. And this is our weekly show where we talk to entrepreneurs, business leaders, and visionaries who are using their platforms in order to have a positive impact in the world and have them take us behind the scenes into the trenches to share with us the lessons that we can all use as we're out there leading our own movements. And I have to say right up front how amazing it has been this year to bring this show together with all of the experts that we have had on, all of those movement makers. Everyone has been so incredibly gracious and generous in coming and sharing their stories. And it's been a real joy and a highlight for us this year, in a year that otherwise obviously has had, a lot of challenges for folks. It's been a very heavy year for all of us. And so it's been a really bright spot to have these conversations every week about people who are continuing to move forward with that positive impact. And today's episode will be no different. This is our final live episode of the year that we are doing. We close our offices a little early to give our team time to truly unplug and spend time with their families. I take some time off as well as a busy entrepreneur. So we will be back the second full week of January with our next episode. And we very much look forward to having you back then. But we do just want you to know this is our final episode. We are live today as well, which means we want to hear from you. If, as we're talking, there's something you want to contribute to that conversation, you just want to let us know that it's resonating with you, and or if you have a question for our guest, we certainly encourage you to do that. And we also encourage you to make sure you're connected with us on social media. Specifically, you want to make sure that you are following our YouTube channel, that's where we post these videos when they're done. And you also want to make sure you're connected to me over on Instagram. I'm easy to find. I'm the only Angelique Rewers that is there. All right, so let's talk about our guest today, who, by the way, is joining us all the way from Paris. And we are so incredibly honored to have her with us today. If you have ever thought about maybe starting your own nonprofit, or if you've looked at how you can collaborate with nonprofits in order to bring more impact to the world, to really bring your movement to the world in a bigger way, today's episode is definitely for you. We are joined today by Dr. Monique Wells, a visionary, a change maker, and a steward of legacy. Through her entrepreneurial work as a veterinary pathologist and toxicologist, travel professional, writer, speaker, and mentor, she harnesses the power of education to change lives. Monique has combined her passion for life sciences, literacy, STEAM education, which, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with the STEAM acronym, is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The arts, travel, study abroad, and women's empowerment under the umbrella of her U.S. nonprofit organization, the Wells International Foundation. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Monique Wells from Paris. It is so good to see you.
It is so good to be here, Angelique. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to be with you today.
Well, the universe brought us together. You were so kind to reach out to me a few weeks back, and I was so humbled by your outreach for the invitation that you made to me. And I started looking at your work, and the more I read, the more inspired I was. Share with everyone, what is the movement that you are leading?
Well, I am, as you said, as you introduced me, or in the way that you introduced me, I am the founder and CEO of the Wells International Foundation, and our mission is to cultivate global citizenship through education and culture. And we do that through various projects and programs in all of the strategic focus areas that you mentioned: women's empowerment, the arts, STEAM education, literacy, travel, study abroad. And we are, as much as we can, and this often happens serendipitously, we are merging strategic focus areas into a given project or program. A lot of times that happens just on its own. Sometimes we have to think, well, maybe can we pull in a little bit of literacy into this project or whatever. But We have done some phenomenal things over the past 5 years of our existence. We actually celebrated our fifth anniversary in October of this year. And as you well know, 5 years is a milestone in any kind of a business, for profit or non. So we really celebrated this year, and we are ready for the next five going forward, like gangbusters.
That is absolutely incredible. Congratulations on that 5-year anniversary. This is our 10-year anniversary here. And I will
Right.
tell you, it's amazing how those years sneak up on you. It's in the beginning, you're not always sure how everything's going to come together. And before you know it, you're celebrating your 5-year anniversary. And that is something to be celebrated. Um, Although this year was sort of interesting, did you all have we had some plans for our 5-year or our 10-year anniversary that went up in smokes. Did you have plans this year that were derailed?
We did. So not necessarily for the anniversary per se, but we did have things on the books, obviously, that we had to cancel because of the pandemic. One thing that was really hard for me to take um, was we were going to do a mentoring event. This is under our Women's Empowerment Initiative. We were going to do a mentoring event in collaboration with the American University of Paris, and we were going to do that during the week of International Women's Day. International Women's Day is March 8th. Our event was scheduled for March 6th, and it was canceled on March 3rd. Um, yes,
Ooh.
yes. We have bounced back. We are going to do that event next March. We're going to do it virtually. We have our panel all together now. I'm very, very excited about what's possible. In so many ways, COVID-19 has opened up avenues that we would not have thought of otherwise. And so I like to say there's always a silver lining if you just have your eyes open and are willing to, allow yourself to see.
Amen
And
to that.
yeah. And so COVID, as horrible as it is, and as horrible as everything that, all the illness, all the death, all the pain that it is causing, at the same time, it is opening up avenues that I think it might have taken us another 5 to 10 years to figure out that we had available to us. And so, I'm grateful. I am grateful for that. We did a big pivot over the summer because we had planned to do um, another women's empowerment event that we were kept pushing it back and pushing it back, and finally we're just like, let's not do that. Let's do something else instead. We decided that we would do a virtual art exhibition that we have decided to call COVID-19 Pages: The Influence and Inspiration of Women. And what that's all about is we are celebrating the work, the essential work that women do around the world to mitigate the effects of COVID-19. And we are celebrating women in all walks of life, in all kinds of positions, all sectors of the economy. We started out because when we conceived of this idea, the pandemic was fresh, and we were talking about first responders, and we were talking about essential workers, and how so many of those people were and are women. And we were thinking of celebrating that per se. Then we got, politicians involved. We saw how the Prime Minister of New Zealand shut the virus down there, and how it seemed for a while in the press that the mainstream press was focusing on how countries that were led by women were doing better with COVID-19 than countries not led by women. And so our vision started to expand. So let's not only talk about the first responders and the essential workers. Let's talk about people in other segments of the global economy that are doing things and meaningful things to combat this global crisis. And so that's what the theme of our exhibition is. And then we thought about the fact that we wanted to have women celebrating women. And I immediately thought about the fact that professional women artists, like professional women in so many other arenas, are marginalized, not able to do as well, not able to rise as far, not paid as much for what they do. And so we're doing some educational programming in conjunction with our exhibition on that topic. And we're also looking at the fact that art is a form of therapy. We're looking at creation in general as a way of healing, as a way of releasing stress, anxiety, cleansing. And we actually had just a few weeks ago a roundtable discussion on that called Creation as Medicine during challenging times. And we are going forward from that roundtable, which was absolutely phenomenal. And we're going to be doing some other educational programming around that.
Wow. I'm sure there are people listening right now who are thinking, when do you sleep? When do you sleep? And Tolu, thank you so much. She's wishing both of us congratulations on our anniversaries. And I appreciate that so very much. I mean, I hear you saying all of this and all of these pieces. And, the thing that really struck me the most when I started reading in your website and then went to the next page and the next page and the next page is actually illustrated in what you just articulated there. So much of what you do through this nonprofit is very, very multifaceted. When you're doing something, you're not just doing one thing. You're taking something, you're introducing it, and then you're saying, well, if we're going to do this, then let's make sure we're also lifting up these people. Let's make sure then we're also talking about this aspect. Where does that come from? That ability to take what, some people might say, oh, let's just have an art exhibition and let's just focus on this. Where does that multifaceted systems level strategic thinking come from? And how can other people think like that and use their platforms the way you are?
Oh my goodness. That's a question. That is
That's
a
a million
question.
dollar question, isn't
It is. It really is.
it?
It really is, and I don't think anybody's ever asked me how that happens. It's natural for me. You know how in entrepreneurship we talk about your genius zone.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, strive to do things in your genius zone. This is my genius zone. It's just natural, and I wake up either in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning as I'm awakening, and it's like, oh, you got to do this.
Mhm.
This just or I have a question. It sometimes comes in the form of a question. Well, what would happen if, or who's thinking about this really, and how can we answer this question? Sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's just a knowing. You've got to do this. You've got to do this. And then I just said about, so how? So the thing, the what comes generally in the night or upon wakening, and the how comes in the shower.
That is probably the most honest answer we could get to that question. And what's so fascinating to me is that I do the same thing. I will wake up in the middle of the night. Usually for me, it's 3 a.m., the witching hour, right? And I sort of wake up and I have that thing. And then, we just kind of move forward doing it. And then it somehow unfolds as it's going. But I will tell you though, as I was reading through the different initiatives, you do it at a scale and at a way of just really baking everything you possibly can bake into each initiative to have the greatest lift. And I just want to commend you for that because I could
Thank you.
see it as I was reading the descriptions of the programs and the way that you've put so many layers of impact into them. It's really astonishing. What made you start this nonprofit? Were you did you come from the nonprofit world or you really didn't because I know your bio. So what made you wake up one night and say, I'm going to start this nonprofit?
Well, so I'll tell you a sort of a medium version of this story because it's a quite long story. Um, so the short answer is that I wanted to honor a painter, an African American man named Buford Delaney, who spent the last 26 years of his life in Paris. The last 4 of those 26 years he spent in a mental institution. and he was buried he was a pauper when he died, and he was buried in an unmarked grave in a cemetery outside of Paris. I became involved in his story because of the for-profit business that my husband and I have, Entree to Black Paris tours. And I wanted to do something to honor him. That's the very, very short version. The backstory of that is in 2012, I was honored by an organization called Professional Women International, and I was invited to San Francisco to accept that award. And I met a woman named Sharita Herring, who was also receiving an award. And we had dinner that evening, and she talked about how you could do anything with a nonprofit. And she just started spouting off all of these myths that people have about nonprofits. And she's like, well, did you know that the NFL is a nonprofit? And I'm like, and all of this. And I'm just like, I said, well, that sounds wonderful. But in the back of my mind, I was saying, that sounds too good to be true. That sounds too good to be true. But this woman is all fired up, and she's been doing this for years. So, what do I know? I will open my mind and I will say, I'll just open my mind. I'll put this in a drawer and I will come back to that. When it turned out that I wanted to do this art exhibition in Paris, I thought about her again. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to reach out to her and see what she thinks, because I needed to raise money to do this exhibition. I had started a French nonprofit to raise money to place a tombstone at Buford Delaney's grave. And when I decided that even that wasn't enough, that I wanted to keep going to honor this man, I thought, okay, I need US dollars, and I need a lot of US dollars. And the best way to do that is to probably start a nonprofit. I didn't know anything else to do. Crowdfunding wasn't all that, it wasn't on my radar and all of that. So I contacted her and I said, this is what I want to do. And I said, and while we're at it, I want to put all of my personal and professional passions into my nonprofit. So she's like, we can do that.
And you really have. There's so much under the umbrella of the organization, which you're really that Renaissance woman, because you have, I mean, for folks who really look at your bio and say, wait a second, did Angelique say veterinary toxicology? I mean, and Pat, like, is that what Angelique said? And it is, right? So, I mean,
Yes.
you really have so many layers. What is your favorite, pandemic aside? So, especially we have some lights at the end of the tunnel now. I certainly hope, on
Mhm,
the pandemic side.
mhm.
What is one of your favorite things to do through the nonprofit?
It's really hard. It's a toss up between the arts and women's empowerment.
Mhm.
And the COVID-19 pages is a combination of those things. It's just quite naturally fits together. Um, but I'll tell you that I have, in my past, wanted to support women entrepreneurs, women leaders. I started out from being a veterinary pathologist and toxicologist, and having a consulting business and seeing my consulting business completely tank during the 2008 2009 recession, reinventing myself again, trying to stay in my genius zone, starting a program first for my industry, and then when the industry kept going into deeper and deeper recession, branching out to help women like me, women working alone, women working at home, to manage their time, quote unquote. And I realized that I didn't know anything about, you know, I didn't know anything about coaching. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about anything. The reason that I was able to even do that for my industry was because I already had a huge know, like, and trust factor, and I created a course for the industry. I even had the study that I based that course on published in a peer-reviewed journal. So the scientific method all there and everything. When I started to work with women, it was like just being thrown into the big sea, thrown overboard into the big sea. It was devastating for me to realize that all of my brain power was useless. And I was really just starting from ground zero. and needed to learn how to run an entrepreneurial enterprise, and how to do the marketing and do the sales and do all the back end, and still, keep myself um, erect, alert, just not swimming in it all the time. That was very, very difficult. It's probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. And I wanted to work with women entrepreneurs. That's how I started. And as I was going through all of this angst and, pain as I was trying to build this business, I realized that I, as a leader in my field, veterinary pathology and toxicology, completely, you know, in a new arena, like a babe in the woods, I realized that I had no one to talk to,
Mm.
because my people in my industry didn't understand why I left in the first place to start a business, and and people who I was, in my family, they're like, you were making all this money, just
Ah,
go back and get, you know, nope, nobody got me, and I was like, okay, there are a lot of women like me who are leaders who don't have anybody to talk to, and I started to work on creating a program, mentoring program for women leaders. And that led me to do the International Women's Day event through the Wells International Foundation. I call us WIF, WIF for short. We did our inaugural um, International Women's Day event in 2019 called The Successful Woman, Lifestyle, Legacy, and Leading by Example.
oh my gosh, there's so much gold in what you just shared. First of all, I don't know anyone who left their career to start a business who their family and their former peers didn't think was out of their mind. Like, that is definitely part of the crucible that we all cross when we leave our corporate careers and we go on that path. Everyone is like, "What are you doing?" But the security, but you put all this time in, but you built this career. What are you doing? So I love that it also happened in a field that I'm not as familiar with. So that settles it. That's universal.
It
That's it
is.
right there, you guys. That's universal.
It
Um,
is.
the other thing though that I hope that people you laid it down, I hope people pick it up, as they say, is that, here you are with these advanced degrees, you're this incredibly accomplished, intelligent person. You were thriving in the field that you were in, but when you started a business, or an or and a nonprofit is a business. And the NFL, it's funny, we were just talking about this. The NFL and all those associations out there are all, in fact, they're 501c6s instead of 501c3s, but same dealio.
Mhm.
And so it's not necessarily intuitive that just because you have a high IQ and you're incredibly successful in one field or career path, when you start your own thing, you are a bit alone. Typically, your old networks don't know how to support you. And you have to find your new people. You have to find your new group of support, network of support. So that's just an incredible thing that you shared for everyone. What do you think, especially because you do work with women all over the world? There's work that you do. You work across Africa, North America, Europe, women of all backgrounds. What would you say is something that is unique to women as they go out there and lead their movements, whether it's through a nonprofit or a for-profit organization? What do you think are some of the unique challenges that women face that they need to step through, just from a mentor perspective?
Well, definitely one thing is that women tend to suffer much more from imposter syndrome
Mm.
than men. And it's it can be really devastating, actually. Uh, we also have this feeling that, especially if we are in a male dominated field, and STEM is a male dominated field, at least certain areas of it are, that we need to be like men. We need to emulate men in order to be successful. And so you're denying the essence of yourself, and that will just eat you alive. It won't necessarily happen quickly, but it will erode you until you are a shadow of the person that you started out as. And it certainly prevents you from being all that you can be. And so that was part of what the Successful Woman Lifestyle Legacy and Leading by Example was about. We did interactive sessions in the morning. This was a 2-day session, a 2-day conference slash retreat in Paris. Um, we had interactive learning in the mornings. We had masterminding in the afternoons. The first morning, we talked about the importance of crafting your image.
Mhm.
And we talked a lot about what image is. And of course, image, you think about seeing. But we talked about much more than what the person can see with regard to what your image is as a woman leader. And we ended up, it was quite interactive. We had exercises where people got up and moved around the room. There was a lot of slapping of post-its on people's backs and all kinds of things. It was quite fun. But it was also very instructive. I remember clearly one of the participants saying, "I'm horrified that you see this in me."
Mm.
She said, "I don't see myself that way at all." And she said, it's not, I don't find the label itself offensive. I just don't see myself that way." And we worked through, you know, what needs to go into the image that you want to portray as a leader, and how important it is that that first impression that you make be as much as possible what you want it to be. You are responsible for that. Most people don't think about that. You are responsible for it, and you can actively craft it. And so that's what the whole topic was for that first morning. The second morning, we talked about legacy. Legacy has been a topic that's been on my mind and on my heart for many years. And so I just wanted to bring it out there. I'm like, ladies, do you realize that you are living a legacy? So many people think about legacy in terms of wealth. They think that they don't have a legacy if they're not independently wealthy, and if they don't, if they're not giving thousands of dollars away every year, or if there's not a building named after them, or, a room in a hospital or something like that. I'm like, well, finance is obviously part of legacy, but we have our personal legacy and we have a philanthropic legacy as well. And those things intertwine and they inform how you come to the table as a leader. So we discussed all of that. Extremely powerful, more powerful than I ever imagined. These sessions were recorded. We had originally planned to live stream them. That didn't work out. But we did record them and we've turned them into a training. And everybody signed a confidentiality agreement when they came to this event, and they knew that they were being recorded. But when we got down into it, it wasn't even, I will say, once we opened up the conversation between the panelists and the audience, people got so personal so quickly
Mm.
that we had to edit out half of the recorded information in order to put it into a training, because it was just so intensely personal and so powerful. The afternoons we spent masterminding, we used what we learned in the mornings, and we brought that to the tables in the afternoon to address a personal or professional challenge that each person was asked to bring to our event. And we really, really wanted to replicate that, duplicate that. We wanted to have another event this year. There were sponsorship challenges and all, and then of course COVID. Um, but the good thing is, and again, COVID has its silver lining. We have the recordings of the morning sessions. We decided that we would couple those video um, sessions with a virtual mastermind, and so can actually replicate the entire event, and we
That's
can
amazing.
offer. It's amazing. We can have the live facilitators and everything. People can go through the video training on their own. they're all the video prompts and everything for, okay, did you get this from this segment? And there's a workbook and all the slides and everything are there. Um, and
Isn't
then you take,
it's amazing what was able to be retained in the virtual environment. I mean, isn't it really when you think about it? I mean, they say necessity is the mother of invention, but I mean, really, I'm listening to you and you were able to repurpose something from in person. I bet you there are benefits to the virtual.
of course.
That didn't. So I'm listening to you say that and I'm thinking, so many folks they just stopped and you didn't. You said we're just gonna we're gonna just sort of tweak some of these things
Hmm.
and make it possible
Hmm.
to go forward. There's something else you said though that I want to go back to about the imposter syndrome, and as you were elaborating on that, one of the things that it sounds like came out of that shared experience was the understanding that everyone is carrying something around.
Yes.
That's the fact that when you had to cut 50% out because just the amount of what was being shared. I was on a faculty. We have our own programs now, but I was on a faculty for many years of a group, and it was really fascinating, Monique, because every single retreat, every time we brought people together, everyone had stories. And in the beginning, they all seemed like, "Wow, oh my gosh, wait, what? Wow!" And then the longer that I listened over the years, the stories actually have more in common than they don't. I mean, they all have their own flavors, they all have their own things, but when you really listen to people's stories, like the human story is so much more common than I think people realize.
Yeah.
And the emotion that we all have around the things of our, the various elements that shaped our lives, we have so much more that actually unites us. And it's really interesting when you put people in a room that's of high trust, as you clearly created, and that stuff starts coming out, really the breakthroughs that people have to go out and do and to lead in that imposter syndrome, they realize, wait a second, this is actually a shared experience. I everyone's feeling like this. Isn't that an amazing thing when that happens?
It is. It is amazing, and it is so empowering to know that you are not alone. And that's the reason that I really started in. So when I started out, I was working with, startup women entrepreneurs. At this point, and there are still programs that can serve them, but my focus right now is much more on women leaders. And COVID again is something that shines a huge light on how important the feminine brand of leadership is. If you are not trying to pretend to be a man, if you're not trying to emulate the male, paradigm of leadership, be the woman that you are. You bring so much, I will say more, to the table in a leadership capacity if you embrace and utilize all that is the feminine. Um, the feminine.
Yeah.
We are very, very much more prone to listening. We are very much more prone to collaborating. We are very much, this is what this world needs. And I am more convinced than ever that if we had more women in power, it doesn't matter. I'm not talking just about government, I'm talking about across the board. We would be in a much, much, much better place. And I just want to make my little contribution to helping women who are feeling stuck, who are feeling alone, who are feeling, guilty because they actually have um, achieved so much, but they feel like they've left other people behind. And so it's like, well, who am I really to be this successful person, successful, whatever successful is. And what does success mean to you? Are you living somebody else's form of success? Are you living the definition of success that is truly yours? There are so many of these questions that women are actually, if they are floating around in their heads, they don't have time to deal with them. And some of them are actively suppressing them because they don't want to know. They're afraid to find out what the answers to those questions are. I'm like, ladies, we need to, it all starts with you. And if you can go in, tap in, listen, there's a well of wisdom. There is infinite wisdom inside if we can just tap into it, if we can just stay still long enough to listen and trust it and then act upon it. That's 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 what the successful woman to me is. That's who the successful woman is, a woman who can do that,
Well,
do
you're
it
you're
consistently.
living it. You're living it because every time you no, I shouldn't say every idea you have. I think we all have more ideas than we could ever possibly implement, okay,
Yes.
in one lifetime anyway.
Hmm.
But you're implementing it. You implement it. You've implemented on moving forward on this virtual art installation, this virtual art exhibit around COVID-19 and first responders and women artists, and especially women artists who are women of color, which is an incredible element of that. I know
Hmm.
you and I talked earlier about artists of color often being really marginalized from exhibit space, but you're
Hmm.
doing other things too. You also are writing a series right now
Yes.
where you're interviewing women and using that platform in that interview series in order to amplify other women's voices. Tell us all a little bit about that.
Oh, yes. I'm so happy to tell you about that, tell your audience about that. So, actually, there are two series that I'm doing. I started one, almost 2 years ago, called Mentoring Matters. And it focuses on the importance of mentoring for women, peer to peer, as well as intergenerational mentoring, um, male, female, 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 whatever, you know. Um, that's one. But the one that's very new and the one that, again, speaks to my bordering on obsession, if you will, with the topic of legacy is um, it's called What Does Legacy Mean to You? I am interviewing women in all sectors of the economy, just inviting them to talk about what they view legacy as being, how they see legacy connected to leadership, if they do. Everyone has said, of course, legacy is connected to leadership and vice versa. And then how they believe that those two things are connected and how this has played out in their lives. And I am so happy to say, Angelique, that you were my first article published for that series. It's on Thrive Global, and just getting some phenomenal feedback from women who are leaders and who are living a legacy right now. It's not just about what happens when you're gone. You are building right now what people are going to see when you're gone. And so you may as well focus on it and build it up to the best of your ability now so that when you are the fly on the wall at your own funeral, you'll be happy with what people are saying about you.
Well, that's really ultimately the big question, right? That is sort of the big question of when you look back, have you done what you wanted to do? Have you lived the way um, that you intended to live and to show up in the world? It was really actually, it was such a gift for you to invite me to be a part of that series. It was a real joy to do that, but it was a gift in the questions that you had for me
Mm.
because they were so reflective. They really made you think. And I'd encourage folks, number one, you've got to go check out the series on Thrive Global. If you haven't had a chance to do that, please do. And I would just challenge everyone to ask yourself the very questions that Monique is asking those that she's interviewing, because there's such powerful questions that really make you think. And I feel like we need more time to do that, especially this year. Is actually people are working more hours this year. They're actually more connected to digital this year. We're having less time to actually stop and think, interestingly enough.
Mhm.
So, now this time of year, the end of the calendar year is such a great opportunity to do that. Um, let me go back for a minute to the COVID-19 pages project before we wrap up here and ask you, how can others support you in that? That's really your big focus right now. That's your sort of tip of the spear initiative at the moment.
Mhm.
And it is focused on women, and it is focused on the pandemic and how we're both contributing to, but also being impacted by in such unique ways by this pandemic. I mean, women have played a leading role, but they've also been um, I would say, bearing the brunt of
Yes.
so much that's happening when you look at who's lost their jobs, when you look at the caregiving, when you look at schooling children from home, when you look at people, the number of people who could possibly lose their homes or be evicted here in the United States, it's disproportionately women and especially women who are single mothers. So
Yes.
women have definitely had a very challenging year this year. And this is really both a celebration, but also a recognition of
Yes.
what's going on there and where we need to help. How can all of us spread the word about this? How can we support it? How can we support you? What can we all do as a community to support this effort?
Well, first, um, just talk about it. Talk about it. There is the COVID-19 pages page on the Wells International Foundation website is not in the navigation bar. I need to put it there. I've just been running like crazy.
I think
I need to get the slider, to add that to the slider. But the URL is wells.internationalfoundation.org/COVID hyphen 19, the number 19 hyphen pages, and you will find the information there. So just talk about it with people. Um, the second thing, obviously, is to donate because we have a team. I have a curator, I have a technical engineer who are working with me to put this all together. We are soliciting submissions from professional women artists, but we are also going to have a community outreach phase for this exhibition that is going to reach out to schools, K through 12 schools, universities, youth groups, elder care facilities, shelters. We want non-professional artists also to contribute to this effort because, again, the creation of art in the spirit of honoring and celebrating women is also going to be a way of healing, a way of relieving stress, a way of relieving anxiety. Um, and so we're going to have two phases. Our phase one is going to launch on International Women's Day 2021. That's the professional artist phase. Phase two is going to be our community outreach phase. That's going to launch on June 23rd, 2021. And we are already getting commitments from organizations to have their youth or the women who are being served by them to create art to submit to us. So, a second way that you can support us is if you know of an organization that you believe could benefit from participating, um, let me know. Email me, let me know, and I will reach out. Or, and even better, if you are able, introduce me to the director of that organization or the manager or, the principal, the head of school or whatever, so that we can engage in a conversation about how we can get the curriculum for the community outreach phase to them, and so that they can understand what they need to do to contribute. And we even have we've actually requested for grant money, so that if we are able to get this grant money, we will be able to send art supplies to organizations that don't have the resources to actually have the participants create the art. So those are ways, and then of course you can just always donate to WIF in general. Um, we always use money where we need it most, um, and right now, COVID is our project. The
It's the
COVID-19 pages is
world's
our
it is
project.
the world's, I would say that's the world's project, but the way that you're looking at really telling these stories and, using this initiative to bring so many facets together is really remarkable. I hope folks take away from, this interview, not just your inspiration as a leader, but your strategic systems thinking about how you're tackling these problems, and the way that you're doing this. I'd really encourage everyone to spend time on your website, really reading more about what you're doing and just all the different facets that you've brought together, all these different lanes from the science and math and technology side to the arts to the travel and study abroad and bringing the young community together with a professional community. It's really remarkable. And I had to I had to hear your story, because the more I read, the more I was intrigued and inspired. And I don't know how people say that about me. I do not know how you have time to do all of these things, but you are just an absolutely remarkable woman. I'm in complete awe and just really inspired by what you're doing. Thank you for doing this work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for your appreciation, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share it. I will say too that we're talking about, we've talked about how people can help. Individuals can certainly help in the ways that I've described, but we can also use corporate support. And
Yes.
yes, we can
Yes.
also use corporate support. So, there's corporate responsibility out there. There's organizations that are looking to improve their DE&I. All of that fits in to here. And that also goes for the Successful Woman Video Training and Mastermind. You
Yes.
know, all of that, if you if that's something that is of interest to you, lifting up women who you want to be leaders, lifting up farther women who are already leaders in your organization, having those women, maybe those women want to contribute a piece of art to COVID-19 pages. I mean, you don't have to be a professional artist. That can be part of the community outreach.
I
If you want
love
to make that part of what your corporation is doing, let me know.
Brilliant. I will just add, as a former corporate leader, someone who comes from that world, I would say, well, it's relevant for all. This really is such a phenomenal opportunity for companies that operate in the first responder space. I know that's not the only space, but what a phenomenal, really like just hand in glove opportunity for those organizations to get involved with what you're doing in a way that is entirely aligned with the work and mission of their organizations. I hope they do that. And I hope they see that. It's been actually a record year, believe it or not. Actually, for those of you who missed it, the Washington Post today ran an interesting article. It's been a record year for companies profit wise. And yet
Mm.
there have been, in fact, a lot of layoffs and downsizing. And so right now companies are actually sort of flush with revenue. A lot of people don't realize that the big corporates are actually flush with revenue right now. And they're also saying though they want to help the economy recover and they want to be more involved. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to do that. There are no shortage of opportunities, but this would be a phenomenal one for sure, especially for organizations that value diversity, equity, and inclusion, value the work of first responders, value the women in the workplace and the unique challenges they've had. So I hope they'll hear that message. And I certainly look forward to hearing from you about how all of this comes together and the impact that it has. I hope you'll come back and share the story on the other side of it and the lessons learned. It would be great to have you back. Where can folks go? What are some of the best ways for folks to connect with you after the show?
So the best way to reach me personally is by email. My email address is wells@wells international foundation.org. That's all spelled out. Um, wells@wells international foundation.org. If you're on social media, we have our Facebook page. Use Facebook, .com/Wells International Foundation. On Instagram, we're at Wells INT. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's linkedin.com/IN/MYW Paris.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, I listen. Paris is on my list for very soon. I will make it a priority that when I am finally back in Europe, that we will have to lay eyes on each other in person. We'll have to get together and do that. Hopefully, that is here sooner rather than later. I just want to say thank you again. Congratulations on your 5-year anniversary. Congratulations on the COVID-19 Pages Initiative. And congratulations for all the work that your organization is doing and what it continues to do. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Angelique. I have one more thing I want to
Oh,
say.
please do.
We are having, so we, with the Wells International Foundation, is working with two other women's organizations, two other women nonprofits, to have a virtual trip to Paris on New Year's Eve.
Oh my
And
goodness, how
so,
amazing.
yes, we are doing it. And it's going to be, so I'm 6 hours ahead of the East Coast. It's going to be from 12 noon to 2:30 p.m. We're going to begin the countdown, the New Year's Eve countdown, 12 noon to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's 6 to 7:30 p.m. my time. And we are going to have so much fun.
Oh
One of
my
the things we
gosh.
didn't, yes, one of the things we didn't talk about today is that I also have a tour business and specializing in the African American and greater African diaspora, history, culture, and contemporary life in Paris. And then we're going to be doing a virtual tour. And we are going to be having like
Wow.
party favors and people who sign up. We're going to get this virtual, excuse me, they get a virtual passport and a virtual boarding pass. It's just going to be fun. There's going to
Oh my
be
gosh, how
virtual
innovative.
photo booth. Yes, we're gonna just blast it out. And this is a fundraiser. So if anybody's interested in that,
Oh
email
my
me.
gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. I had no idea. Well, I just want to point out a few things. So, one, how should folks find out how they can participate in that with you on New Year's Eve?
Okay. Um,
Should they
let
email
me,
you?
yeah, you can email me.
Okay.
Let me find the Bitly link because Bitly
Okay.
is easier
Than the long one. And
than the
while
long
we're doing
one.
that, we will also Michelle has posted here, and, I wanna make sure maybe Vince, you can capture this, note. Michelle, thank you so much for posting this. Michelle, joined us, and she says that there's an introduction that she wants to make for you,
Oh,
and,
great.
which is wonderful, an introduction and, to a grantor fund, and while Monique is looking for that link to share about the sort of virtual New Year's in Paris on New Year's Eve, which I love.
Hmm.
I just love how when I asked her how folks can help and how folks can get involved, how Monique, you were ready with, and I didn't tell her I was going to ask that question, but she was ready, you guys. And that's the thing, I think women, we all need to be willing to say, this is how folks can help. This is how folks can get involved. This is what we can do. And I'm just sharing it because Michelle just really honored that instantaneously. Ask and you shall receive. And so
Fantastic.
I want to honor you, Monique, for that. And I want to honor you, Michelle, for that.
Thank you.
It's magic when that happens.
It is, and I am all about magic. I live in the miracle zone. I just put the Bitly link in the chat. I don't know if anybody can see
Oh,
that.
there
Maybe
it is.
it's,
Yes, thank you. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Bit.ly / ladies trip. Oh, how phenomenal. Phenomenal. And the is so innovative. I love it.
yeah, we're
Love
gonna
it.
have a
Oh
great
my
time.
gosh.
Great
What a high note to end, and perfect as our final episode of the year. What a perfect and really and such a perfect invitation to the community to do that. I also want the real trip, by the way.
time. Okay, yes,
And I'm
yes.
in the tour. I would like the tour in person. So we'll make sure we arrange for that to happen it's going right on the 2021 vision board for me.
All right,
This
all
has
right.
been you are just you're such an inspiration. I can't say it enough. It's really been such an honor to have you on. Everybody check out that link. Make sure you connect with Monique on social, on her website, on LinkedIn. Take advantage, see what she's up to and what she's doing, in really just a complete role model in how to lead your movement. Dr. Monique Wells, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And we'll make sure we also share with our community again. We'll post on social the recent article on legacy, the interview that I did with Monique on that. It's really a great series that she's doing talking about legacy. Thank you all so much for joining us, not just for this episode, but for this show this year. We're going to continue to bring you these episodes next year. We have some pretty amazing, we've already, I mean, we have Dr. Monique Wells, amazing guests. We have some surprise guests coming next year, perhaps folks you wouldn't necessarily think of, but that we want to hear their stories and how they have built the platforms and the followers that they've built, how they've built the relationships that they've built. Because there are a lot of experts out there who are always talking about the strategies and the tactics, and that stuff is really important. We talk about that at the corporate agent too, but there's something different when you hear from the people who are actually out there doing it. They're actually leading their movements through their nonprofits or their small businesses or their small enterprises, and they're really using those platforms to have an impact. And that's really our goal, that you get to hear it from their perspective, what they're doing. And these are folks just like all of us. And so it's really just a decision on your part, to take that next step in the impact that you want to have and the movement that you want to lead. Thank you all so much for being here. And I wish all of you a very, very happy new year. And I will see you in 2021.